Lobster, got it back yet. Lobster's a 10 item, don't you grab it.
This video is brought to you by T-Blocks. Enjoy the content now, but stay for the shilling later. Welcome to Lobster Magnet and Friends. I'm here with my buddy Goro Gregoro.
Hey, what's up?
And we are here to talk about the Junji Ito collection. We saw the first 2 episodes. Oh, it's very, very scary. Ooh.
Yeah,
so we were
very cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very scary.
Very scary. I was terrified because it had blood in it and things looked really creepy. And monsters. Very, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so we were lamenting that we didn't have a seasonal anime to watch, and we were like debating, we'll go marathon some other stuff. Maybe we'll force ourselves to watch Boruto. But then I remembered there's this Junji Ito collection, which is a big deal because Junji Ito is a really famous Junji Ito is a really famous horror mangaka, almost as horrifying as that sticker of the, shark eating Goro Gregoro.
Yeah.
And so basically what this is it's like a kind of like an anthology show where each episode adapts several of his short horror mangas. Now, his most famous...
You almost said harem mangas.
Yeah, I almost did. We've been talking a little bit too much about harems. Each one of his horror mangas, his most famous works are he did this long-running manga called Uzumaki. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, never heard.
You'd probably love Uzumaki. Who knows? Maybe we'll get an Uzumaki anime after this. Basically, it's about the spiral curse. And the idea is that, the motif of the spiral takes over this town and starts transforming it. And it becomes this apocalyptic, Lovecraftian piece of horror. As, the spiral thing just, overtakes everything and drives people to madness. So there's, and each one is kind of like a self-contained thing, but, it forms, a larger story. One of the stories is about how these kids keep on transforming into slugs.
Is this the story where this girl has a spiral hole in her head or something like that?
Maybe it might have been one of them.
I saw that image on through Google a long time ago, and I was always wondering where the hell did this come from?
Well, it came from Junji Ito. And did I ever show you that Tokyo Fish Attack movie?
I don't think you did.
The one where the fish come to land and they have the walkers. No.
Was it a feel good family film as well?
No, it was actually really, really depressing.
Oh, okay. But his daughter dies, but then he adopts another daughter or something like that.
No, it's there's a girl and she's with a bunch of other Japanese girls, and one's really slutty and one's fat, and then they balloon up because they get infected with the death stench disease.
Okay, I never saw that.
Well, the movie isn't as good as the manga, but it gets a lot of the manga's weird points across. So it's a fun time. So that's another one of his things. So anyway, this guy is hugely influential in the horror scene. So and he does really great horror manga work. So we got to enjoy several of his horror stories in these first 2 episodes. So let's go through them one by one. What did you think of the Sonichi's Everyday Curses?
Sonichi's Everyday Curses?
That was the weird. That was probably the worst one, although apparently that character appears in a few of his short, self-contained stories.
It seems like a funny character to base the first episode around. He's got a certain charisma that.
Well, the whole idea is that I think I'm so good, I'm better than everyone. Ha 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 ha! All these plebeians, and he just looks creepy, and he's always talking to himself. And it's I'm gonna do these things. Ha 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 ha!
Yeah, I suppose it's an okay thing to introduce people kind of casually. It's you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of have you ever seen Tales of the Crypt?
Yeah. You could definitely say this is Japanese Tales of the Crypt.
Yeah, and maybe the first character they introduce is kind of the Crypt Keeper dude, in a sense.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, because the Crypt Keeper is basically he's a storytelling device that's used to introduce other people he's a framing device to like introduce all the stories, and it's not like Sonichi's like, ooh, here's one of this, here's a story about a doll, here's about a fashion model. Like I can see it in that he's like a kind of comedic character who's like a really funny vocal performance, and how that could be, make him like the Crypt Keeper, but like, we only see him this one time. Maybe we'll see him again, but like he's not self-aware. He's not like aware of like the larger meta narrative.
Oh, I know about. I definitely agree with that. But like, in terms of the aspect of him being like sort of the icon, the iconic figure of the show, I suppose.
I guess we've only seen 2 episodes, so it's hard to say if he's going to be the icon. Like, I was definitely not a fan of that one. I just thought it was like, interesting about how weird he was and how arrogant he was, and that was kind of funny, and how like his family treats him like crap, and he hates his family.
Yeah, it's weird because like whenever people figured out like what kind of creepy stuff he was doing, he's like, you're just kind of a little bit strange, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like they didn't react like too like harshly to him. It's just kind of like when he was like trying to dangle spiders in front of his sister, the brother's like, "Hey, knock it off."
You're probably scared of spiders too.
And then the older brother chases him like with the spiders. After that, this is kind of like kind of like a feel good slice of life episode in some way.
I guess this is probably the most feel good probably we'll get, because it definitely gets darker from there. It's definitely one of his more lighthearted stories. It was not my personal favorite. You seem to have liked it much better than I did.
Yeah, I guess it was like a fun little self-contained story. Or should we talk about the?
Yeah, we're gonna move on. Well, let's move on to the doll. So what did you think? It was really short though, but that to me felt like a better mood piece in terms of like, oh, she has the doll disease, and then she just like turns into this really messed up thing with her neck elongated, and you're just like, oh god, what is going on? What is that? That seemed like a better representation of like translating his art into animation.
I think the best part about the doll thing was like the parents saying like, oh, just because she's turned into a doll, like, doesn't mean we have to kill her. We could just keep her like this. And then, you see like as time passes, like years later, like her conditions deteriorated, and she's like kind of like this, like turning into like a deformed insect kind of doll thing.
Yeah.
And the parents are like whispering to each other, we should just kill her right now. Like we should finish her off right now. She's like, I think she can hear you.
That I liked a little better, even though it really wasn't much of a story. It was like 2 seconds. It was just like this really creepy image. But it was much more effective. I did like the second episode much better. So that was the story of like the fashion model.
Yeah.
Which was like also kind of like had this weird comedy round, just because like it's just like this really weird, creepy fashion model who just keeps on staring with these eyes. And I think the best scene is where they're like, going up to the mountain, and then she starts laughing, and then you see the teeth in it.
Oh god, yeah. That was such a weird moment.
that was great. Where like it just keeps on building. And she just keeps on looking weirder and weirder. I was almost disappointed, though, when she actually starts eating the other actress. It felt like that was kind of, like, tame compared to, like, the build-up for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because, normally when it's like she's eating another human being, it's just like, oh, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and we're all kind of like, okay. I don't know. I thought she was going to steal souls or do something creepy.
Maybe it was the way that they told us that she was eating people. It's like his friend like was running towards them. He's like, "Oh, she's eating the other actress."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Right.
that was not.
I'm like, oh yeah, I could definitely believe that. Yeah.
I think actually showing her doing that probably would have been more effective than like just the guy, coming and telling us, and then we just see blood smatters, and then assumingly she like eats the guy, or it's like we're all alone. But I did love the design of the fashion model, and I did love like all the scenes of her just like staring and being creepy. I thought it was a good mix of horror and humor. But that leads way to probably my favorite story so far from this collection, which is The Long Dream. That's probably Junji Ito at his best.
The Long Dream is a pretty cool concept. It didn't so much as like, it didn't really like scare me like some of the other episodes. Well, like, creep me out like so the other. I don't know if I was actually like scared at any of these episodes, but they're like fun little like self-contained stories that have like varying levels of creepiness.
Well, to me, I like The Long Dream because, one, I love the idea that, like, as the dreams get longer, he, like, sort of evolves into this, like, post-human state, and he, like, changes into this, like, creature that looks like it came from, like, 2,000 years in the future. It's, like, this alien form of humankind. And I also like this sort of, like, the existential horror that, like, this isn't so much a shock horror story, and I think it's what Junji Ito does really well, is the idea that, like, kind of taps into a deeper fear of, like, the idea of, like, losing grip on reality, and it's much more Lovecraftian, that, like, the longer you sleep, the more you're submerged into this unconscious reality, and it just, like, you experience it psychically, this eon specks of time, and then the great kicker is in the end where the woman is afraid of death. And she's which is like, of course, one of our most primal fears that we try and cope with, but nobody really has a great way of coping with it. Other than the fact that, like, oh, my body's, like, broken down and horrible. I'd rather die than be stuck into this trap of a mortal shell. And the idea that, like, well, this may kill you, but it will, give you the illusion of breaking the fear of death because your mind and consciousness will exist for eons.
Yeah,
as this like placebo.
That's kind of interesting. Like, almost makes me wish like we could see this doctor character as a reoccurring character. Like, he just takes in all kinds of like weird ass patients that he deals with like in horrific ways like that.
I don't know. I just love that the idea that, like, I gave her the crystals because so I could eliminate her fear of death.
Yeah.
As her, consciousness lives into an eternity, and, it sort of makes sense in a horrific kind of way that, like, for that one instance, the illusion of eternity is a certain form of immortality that we will never have.
Do you think, like, there's something in the episode where the sleep guy was, like, saying to the fear of death girl, like,
well, his wife. Yeah.
Do you think, like, she, like, they're somehow connected through the dreams then at that point when she gets the crystals?
Not really. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. In the original story, they don't touch upon that, but that would be interesting if she dreams of her husband. And, like, that would be really cool if, like, she saw her husband, and then she just sees her husband, like, evolve into this, like, freaking, new human with, like, giant claws and, like, an alien head. And then she transforms into it. But, I think it's, like, a piece of, like, short, self-contained horror fiction. I think it works really well.
Yeah. Yep.
There's this.
Yeah, it's a nice short story.
There's a really good short story I hope they add to this collection where basically, like, it's about this woman who's going to marry this man. And what happens is you learn that, like, his grandfather's, like, lying on the floor and he's, like, bedridden. And she keeps on having this vision of this centipede. But then she realizes the centipede creature is actually, like, a collection of these human skulls that contain all the brains of all of his ancestors.
What?
And that, like, after his father dies, he has to, like, connect to this like brain centipede creature so he can like continue to preserve the legacy of, you know, his family ancestors.
Oh my god.
And then he's like, I have to marry you. I have to continue the family lineage. I have to reproduce. And basically what it does is it like takes like the fears of like marital expectations and it like transforms them into this like Lovecraftian horror.
Wow. That's that'd be interesting to see animated.
Oh, I hope it gets picked up for like one of these ones. We'll have to wait and see. But that's like a perfect example of like taking like a sort of very relatable fear and then just like keep on warping it till the point where it becomes like this. Because that's what Junji Ito does really well. He's like the Japanese Lovecraft in the sense that like, you know, his stories start out pretty simple, but then they like have like some sort of theme or twist or idea. And it just keeps on pushing it into that point where, you know, the reality of the world alters to become this, like, grotesque nightmare.
Yeah. So, your favorite was definitely the sleep one, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite. I thought it was a good adaptation of a good short story.
So then,
what's your favorite?
Which other ones? Like, how would you rate them from like, you know, number 1 to number 4?
Sonichi, Long Dream was my first favorite one. Then the Fashion Model, Doll, and then Sonichi. It's almost in reverse order of how we saw them.
Okay. Well,
so how would you rate them? What was your least favorite to least favorite?
You mean least favorite to least favorite?
Or, you know, favorite short story that we saw versus, you know, your least favorite.
I liked the Dream one. Dream one, number 1. The Dream. I mean, not the Dream. The Doll one. I liked second.
You really like that Doll one. Okay.
Sonichi third.
So you didn't like the Fashion Model? I thought you
I think the Fashion Model was a little bit too predictable. Like I thought it was a great concept at first, like in the beginning parts of the episode, but then it kind of dragged on and like it didn't really like have that good dramatic punch at the end at all.
I'll give you that. Like, it did feel like the least creative. Well, it felt like it had a really great build-up, but, like, yeah, the actual punchline felt like the most predictable thing, and it didn't feel like gonzo enough to, like, justify all the build-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, okay, she eats people, then, all right, then give me this really graphic thing of her, like, just, like, you know, tearing off limbs and eating flesh or something.
Like, somehow make the story a little bit quicker, like make this the punchline happen quicker.
Yeah, or like do something different than her just eating people. Have her do something like a little bit of a creepier horror, like you know, make her have creepy sex or something, or like, you know, make me immortal, or you're gonna be my
like
only
director. Have like a kissing scene with that the main character dude or something like that. That would like really freak everybody out.
Or well, something more external, because yeah, her just eating people feels like yeah, you're right. It is like the most boring choice that you can have.
Yeah.
I mean, but other than that, though, I liked everything. I loved the build-up. I loved her laughing with like the teeth scene and like the slow, build-up.
Like, her whole getup is very iconic. Like her whole face and like the build-up was great. It just didn't execute it well at the end, though.
Yeah, I agree. The end was definitely like below. One thing I heard a rumor about is that there's this famous manga he did called Tommy, and that might get an adaptation as a part of Tommy. That might get an adaptation in this collection.
Wait a minute. So this collection, this is like, I thought these are like all within like the same. This is all based on a singular manga.
Well,
something.
one manga artist's thing, but like, you know, each one of these is a short manga story that he's done. But it's not like they share the same universe.
Well, like, where does he post these? Like, where is he?
I assume he's like
publish
probably in
these?
some Japanese publication. I'd have to like research a little bit more deeply to like find out where he's like actually publishing these stories.
I don't know, like, I don't know how, like, where he would publish like short, like, manga horror stories like this.
You're kind of right in the sense that like it goes against the grain of like how traditionally Japanese manga is published, where it's like, you know, serialized stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'd have to like look into it, and who knows? Maybe I'll do my research, and when we do the next episode, I'll come back with an answer to you. But you know, the only explanation I have now is that his artwork is just so good that like whoever you know publishes it is like, oh my god, this guy is amazing. We need to like, you know, just put his shit in.
Yeah, you know,
And if you ever get a chance, though, he did this like sort of like personal autobiography where it's like just about how much he loves like taking care of his cats. But because he like you can only draw things horror and like all the stuff like looks horrific, like Junji Ito's cats.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got a really good sense of humor if he does something like that too.
It's definitely like after we're done with this, I'll include a link to it so you can check out Junji Ito's cats. It'd be funny if like that's like the last short story of this anthology is just his cat manga.
This is not a genre we usually you know, talk about or review or watch even.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of fun, like, you know, getting a taste of something new like this.
Well, it's definitely like a nice little breath of fresh air from our usual, you know, Japanese teenagers punching each other, which has been our staple.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I'm glad we're watching this, and I'm glad I like, oh, Goro, we got to check it out.
Yep, it's true.
Are you glad? I said, man, we got to check this out.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of, you know, the time we watched, God, what was it? Cabin Fever or something like that.
It's like a crazy horror movie.
Yeah.
Pancakes, 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 pancakes!
Wonderful catchphrase that never will ever go away.
Not in my mind. God, that was like the most random thing ever.
Yeah, it was.
Eating
pancakes.
But you know, it's
Are
always
you
fun.
going to show Zavil this? Do you think?
Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to like get him to watch things. Like it's hard enough to like, you know, get him for those One Piece / Promised Neverland reviews. I would be curious to see what he thinks of it, though. Who knows? I mean, if they do the cat episode, then we'll have to see it. Fingers crossed that we get Junji Ito's cats.
Yeah.
40% likely, but there's also this other great story I hope they do where it's like there's this like weird like giant fish thing that like washes in from the shore, and then you learn that like the fish thing has like the bodies of like all these like partially digested humans who like you know, fell at sea, and then they're all just like living within the fish thing, but they're like half alive.
Oh, it sounds weird.
Oh, it's cool. It's really cool. I hope we get that.
I think you've shown me like one or two of these, like, and from his manga.
Yeah, I probably have. He's a great horror mangaka artist. But it's interesting though to see like the more funny side, like the Sonichi's everyday curses versus like, you know, the existential dread of the long dreams.
Mm.
Which I still do love. That's like the most perfectly Japanese thing that like. So all right, so let's see. Like, you know, I guess should we like eschew our usual rating system and like just like judge these by like how much we like the stories, each individual stories.
Yeah, I guess it makes a lot more sense to judge them story by story.
Yeah, because so Sonichi's Curses gets a 6 from me. The Doll gets a 7. 7 for the fashion model, and 8.5 for the long dreams.
I'll give an 8 for the long dreams, a 7.5 for the doll, about a 6.5 for Sonichi, and I'll give a 5 for the model.
You were loving that model one when we were watching it up until the end.
Yeah, I was, and the end really disappointed me. Like, I was hoping for so much better at the end than
I will give you that. The ending did feel like, like the most sort of boring way to end it after like all that great buildup.
Mm. Yeah, those are our ratings. Like, I guess we should rate. You should always do this like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's the format we'll take for these, this collection as we go through it until it reaches its inevitable end. Oh man, I wonder if they're going to do the San Andreas, or there's also this famous story called the San Andreas or the something fault that like Steven Universe took influence from.
San Andreas.
It's not San Andreas. It's like some sort of blah 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 fault line, and basically the way it works is like.
Steven Universe like ripped off on.
Oh yeah. They directly influenced it. Where basically, the concept from it is, so like there's this earthquake, and then there are these like hole-shaped images that people start seeing in the middle of the mountainside. And then what happens is like people like feel compelled, like this hole is for me, and then because it's like so narrow, all they can do is just keep on walking forward.
Okay.
And eventually, like it gets narrower and narrower, and when they come out through the other side, their bodies are like contorted and twisted.
What? And Steven Universe ripped off on this?
They just took the idea of like people's like shapes in the wall. They didn't quite have like the body horror, but like there is like a Steven Universe thing where it was like a big homage to it.
Is it actually confirmed Steven Universe like took from this manga?
I wouldn't say it took it, but they definitely homaged this little story, or this specific story that I'm talking about.
Okay. So are you saying it's definitely influenced by it?
Yeah. This one aspect of Steven Universe is influenced by this one story of Junji Ito.
Wow. So I guess it's kind of... It's kind of been around, and
Junji Ito
influenced a lot of pop culture.
Yeah, so like not in a huge extent. It's definitely like certain things with like normie basic bitches don't know about Junji Ito, but cool people who do panels at anime conventions who know a lot about fucking manga that nobody reads or that isn't well known all know about Junji Ito. He definitely is like a nerd hipster street cred kind of like thing, name drop.
Okay. I guess. I wouldn't know. It's like I'm learning more about this guy.
All right, so I think that finishes our thoughts on this Junji Ito collection, episodes 1 and 2. We look forward to seeing what new tales of Japanese horror and existential dread will meet us next week. Any final thoughts, Goro?
Is his name actually Junji Ito?
I might be pronouncing it. I hope I'm like pronouncing it right. We'll see. Maybe someone will correct me in the comments.
If it's called the Junji Ito collection, then the author is by Junji Ito.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's his name.
Okay. Doesn't seem like a very creative title for his mangas, or anime, whatever.
It's fine. He's famous enough that, like, it works. What would you call it, Goro? What would you call it?
Spooky Stories. Spooky Stories collection.
That's a great spooky anime stories. Spooky anime. Ooh, it's so spooky. The spooky anime.
You just imagine how they'd say it in English. You know, it'd be like spooky anime stories.
All right, so check out our sponsor. Maybe they have a Junji Ito t-shirt at T-Blocks. My guess is probably not, but the only way you're going to find out is using the Lobster code down there. And thank you for hanging out with us. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.
Do you like clothes but hate shopping? Then T-Blocks is the subscription service for you. But I know what you're thinking. But Lobster, how is that any different than Loot Crate or the other subscription services? Well, T-Blocks sends you t-shirts, which is clothing, which is actually useful, unlike the useless swag junk that Loot Crate keeps peddling on gullible schmucks. And this isn't just knockoff brand crap. T-Blocks hooks you up with licensed shirts for all the stuff you love, because you need clothes. How else are you going to keep your puny human man flesh protected from the elements? T-shirts are useful for any occasion. Wear them, give them to friends, give them to enemies, knit them together, make a quilt. T-shirts are life. And you know the best part? It'll only cost you $6.99. That's right, you can get 12 shirts sent to you for once a month for only $6.99. And you know what? If ultra cheap licensed goods are too basic for you, then there's also the Community T-Block set, which features original designs from the best up-and-coming artists, so you can keep that hipster street cred. But I'm here to save you even more money! Use the code LOBSTERTBX at checkout, and you'll save 10% on any order. Be a t-shirt wearing god amongst mortals. Use the power of the most expensive seafood to get you the cheapest t-shirts now!